Hello dear students, hope you all are doing well. So let's have our online geography class, and we already completed all the chapters and the question answers too, and we are now continuing the revision of all the chapters. And in our first term exam there are 4 chapters. Chapter 4 Urbanization, Chapter 5 Natural and Man-made Disasters, Chapter 7 India Location, Political Division and Physiography, and Chapter 8 India Climate. And we already revised the Chapter 4 Urbanization, Chapter 7 India Location, Political Division, Physiography, and Chapter 8 Indian Climate. And today we will revise the Chapter 5 Natural and Man-made Disasters. Life is extremely unpredictable. Human life is constantly subjected to the dangers of nature or human miscalculations. This may be occurred due to human negligence, error, or intent. A disaster is an event that occurs suddenly and causes major loss of life and property. It disturbs the environment and leads to economic loss. So, awareness and preparedness, they both are important to cope up with disasters. So, what are the causes of disasters? There are several factors that can lead to a disaster. First of all, socio-economic backwardness. Actually, poverty and illiteracy causes lack of awareness. And it is a fact that it is generally the poor people who live in hazard-exposed areas and so are less able to invest on risk-reducing measures. So, they always suffer worstly from disaster. Point number 2, lack of proper planning and inadequate training to cope up with a disaster. And absence of routine study in a disaster-prone area, absence of planned development in the area, absence of well-trained disaster management team, lack of infrastructure to manage a disaster, these all are the which are we called as the lack of proper planning. In this context, the Kedarnath floods in June 2013 is a case of point. The main reason behind the disaster was incessant rains together with melting snow from the ruptured Cholabari Glacier Lake in the higher reaches of the mountains. It caused massive devastation due to overcrowded settlement in the Mandakini Valley and lack of planning to overcome such a situation. And next point is population explosion, which resulting in indiscriminate exploitation of forests and illegal construction of buildings. Actually, due to population explosion, overpopulation actually causes forest depletion, illegal building construction, inefficient drainage system, and these all are harmful to nature and causes devastating disaster. Next point is overutilization of resources. It also causes disaster. Actually, over-mining causes soil erosion and landslide. Debris flows are occurred for that. Overuse of surface and groundwater leads to drought and water scarcity. And depletion of forest causes imbalance in natural ecosystem and increased population. Point number 5. Climate change due to global warming. Due to global warming, glaciers melting and sea level rising, which causes loss of land due to submergence of islands and coastal land. Now, based on their origin, disasters can be categorized into two types: natural disaster and human-induced disaster. Natural disasters are due to climatic or geological factors, and human-induced disasters due to nuclear wars, epidemics, accidents, etc. Firstly, disaster caused due to forces of nature. Flood is such type of disaster. That is a natural disaster. Floods are mostly caused due to heavy rainfall, swelling of river water, dam collapse, cyclones, tsunami, glacier melting, and storm surge in coastal areas. What are the impacts of floods? Floods can cause loss of life and property in plains. They can ruin agricultural output and cause huge loss of food grains and livestock. Crops are washed away by the strong water currents. They usually lead to landslides in mountainous region. As floods destroy homes and habitats, millions of people are rendered homeless. And there are some positive impact of flood. These are floodwaters sweep floodwaters sweep over an area. They deposit fertile silt over these areas. The silt make the soil along the banks of the flooded rivers very suitable for farming. And floods help to increase the levels of groundwater actually. Floodwaters, if properly stored in dams and lakes, can reduce water crisis. And now, what are the risk reduction measures? First of all, mapping of flood prone areas is essential. And rise in the river water level should be closely monitored, and alert signals should be issued when the danger level is crossed. Evacuation of livestock and people should be done from vulnerable areas. Warning should be given through the mass media such as television and radio. And disaster management kit must always be kept ready, and an efficient disaster management team should be organized in the local area. Now about the cyclone. Tropical cyclones are caused by the development of sudden low pressure over the seas, leading to strong winds with thunder and lightning accompanied by heavy showers. Now, what are the impacts of cyclone? Actually, lightweight shelters are blown away. Coastal areas are flooded. Embankments are broken. And often there is contamination of water supplies. High-speed winds damage crops, fishing villages, and other infrastructure. Sometimes entire islands are submerged. And the risk reduction measures are: settlements must be built on higher ground away from vulnerable coastal areas. Cyclone shelters must be built where the people who are evacuated can be sheltered before the onset of the cyclone. And rows of trees called shelter belts must be raised parallel to the coast to obstruct and reduce the speed of the wind and surging seawater. Now, earthquake. The vibrations or shaking of a part of the earth's surface caused by sudden movements under its crust are known as earthquake. Causes of earthquakes are mainly occurs when two interlocking tectonic plates collide, releasing huge amounts of energy to the earth's crust. This produces vibrations on the surface of the earth. As a result of these vibrations, there is a sudden and strong shaking of the ground. And the point of origin of an earthquake is called the focus, and the point on the earth's surface which is directly above the focus is called the epicenter. The strongest impact of an earthquake is experienced by the areas near the epicenter. An impact of the earthquake is very devastating. Earthquake cause damage of weak constructions such as roads, buildings and bridges. Water pipelines also crack, and the collapse of buildings leads to loss of life when people get buried under the debris. And sometimes the ground splits open due to the impact. And what are the risk reduction measures? Earthquake prone areas are to be delineated on map. For construction of buildings, lightweight materials like wood must be used. Earthquake resistant design must be used for the building, and geologically weaker areas must be avoided for construction. Now about the disasters caused due to human activities. Here is a chart. Properly and thoroughly. There are the name of the disaster, causes and risk reduction measures. Nuclear disaster, chemical or industrial disaster, accidents, railroad and air, fire, electric and gas appliances, terrorism and epidemics. These are the disasters, and they are the causes and risk reduction measures. So read this chart thoroughly. Okay. Disaster management in India. The Disaster Management Act 2005 established the NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority. The NDMA has the Prime Minister as its chairman, Cabinet Minister as a vice chairman, and 8 ministers of state handling various responsibilities of planning, policy making, preparedness, mitigation, funds, reconstruction and awareness building. The strategy guidelines of NDMA for disaster management are community-based disaster management, capacity development in disaster-prone areas, cooperation with national bodies, NGOs and with international organizations such as UNDP and UNEP. And the community members include people in police stations, primary health centers, schools and local people. Planning and execution beforehand can reduce the risk. And capacity building in community, that include training authorities and local communities, develop an early warning system, practice evacuation drills, organize search and rescue operations, organize health and first aid services, organize relief coordination teams, build water sanitation teams. And disaster management operation include different phases of action. The steps are as follows. First one, respond and relief. Then rehabilitation and reconstruction. Then mitigation. Mitigation, it includes actions that are taken up to minimize the impact of a disaster. There are two types. There are two types of mitigation. Structural mitigation measures include buildings, cyclone shelters in coastal areas, earthquake resistance buildings in earthquake prone areas or building embankments for flood-proofing a village. Non-structural mitigation measures include awareness building, mapping disaster-prone areas, mock drill by disaster management teams, etc. And next is preparedness. That is very much important. This should be done in advance by the local residents, NGOs, state and country to cope with the disaster better. Now the role of government. The responsibility to organize rescue, relief and rehabilitation lies with the state government, and the central government supplements the efforts of the state government by providing financial and logistic support in case of major disasters. And the nodal agencies responsible for disaster management are for floods, Ministry of Water Resources, for cyclones, Indian Meteorological Department for chemical disasters, Ministry of Environment and Forest for railway accidents, Ministry of Railways for airway accidents, Ministry of Civil Aviation for mine accidents, Department of Mines for industrial disasters, Ministry of Labour for fire accidents, National Disaster Response Force and Civil Defence under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, there are case studies such as floods in Assam, and there are natural causes, anthropogenic causes and impact of flooding. We already discussed about this thoroughly. And the earthquake in Nepal, causes and impact of that. Spills, coastal areas of the United States and the Gulf of Mexico oil spill. Okay. So, this was the chapter, and read the mind map. It is important for you to realize or to understand the chapter very clearly. Okay. So, read it and try to memorize mind map. And read all the question answers as I gave to you. Basically the objective type question answers, because our examination mode is that type of. You have to choose the correct option to answer a question, and you have to click on the correct option, and there will be 40 questions in all, and each question carry 2 marks for each question, and you have to answer 40 questions as I told you. So read all the chapters thoroughly, each and every line of the chapters and all the question answers, and prepare well for the coming exam. Okay, so best of luck to all of you, and that's all for today. Bye to all of you.